Hey guys, it's Kevin again. With 2016 quickly coming to a close, I figured that it would make sense to reflect on the year overall, because 2016, as we know, was a year of some really great films, but there were a lot of really great films, like definitely some really great ones, but there were also some mixed bag out there, and then there were those ones that were absolute shits, and we're going to talk about those. This is going to be, of course, for my worst of 2016 video. As you guys know, I always get my worst list out first. I'm going to try to get my best list out tomorrow, but this will be for all of the films that I completely despised this year, all the films that I found very infantile and just annoyed me, and that I didn't want to watch anymore, and that I was just sick of. These are all the movies that I don't want any of you to watch. Please don't watch any of the movies on this list. But let's just get right into it. Now, before we get into the list, I do have about 3 honorable mentions. Now, I didn't get to watch a lot of the really bad movies this year, and that is an error on my behalf. For me, I think not focusing enough on movies and not watching enough bad movies, I wasn't really equal in terms of bad and good. I kind of watched all good or all bad, and I think I should have been a little bit more equal between them. But let's just get into it. So the first honorable mention we have is none other than Ride Along 2, a really good movie that had a really bad sequel, definitely. So Ride Along 2 is definitely on there, as well as Assassin's Creed. Even though I said there were some good performances in the movie, overall it was still a mess and is just a really bad video game film overall. Just a really bad movie. Not at all a fan of that. And then the third one, of course, is The Fifth Wave. I don't remember this movie at all. I just remember that it had Chloe Grace Moretz and a really bad love triangle, and yet another horrible teen adult, one of those young adult type novels that really need to just die because they're not good movies. But with that said, guys, those are all my honorable mentions. So now let's get right into it, starting off with my number 10. Now, both 10 and 9, while these are movies that I absolutely despise, these are not movies that I gave an F to. The first 2 movies I actually did give a D- to, but they're still horrible movies, but they just do have some good elements to them. And number 10 is probably the most positive, albeit, of any of these movies, and that, of course, is Yoga Hosers. Yoga Hosers in general, I have no idea how this movie came to be. I don't know how Kevin Smith got here. Honestly, I have no idea why he thought that this would be a good idea. I mean, just the movie in general features, a bunch of girls working at this yogurt place, bad Canadian jokes, them saying sorry about that every 5 seconds, them making fun of Canadian accents, and involves a bunch of Canadian Nazi Hitler jokes, so I really don't know how Kevin Smith made something like this. It's nothing that I wish any of you would want to see. It absolutely sucked. Johnny Depp was pretty good. I'll give the movie that, but other than that, this movie was absolute garbage. I really did not like this movie. Honestly, as much as I do like Kevin Smith, if he continues to make movies like this, I'm going to slowly lose respect for him. I know he made this movie just to piss off critics, but seriously, Kevin Smith, make this movie for a private use and not for a bunch of public, everyone to see. Because if this is the type of movies that Kevin Smith is going to be making, his career may be over. I don't really know. It may be, it may not be, but movies like this really just show how I think just really how many shits Kevin Smith does not really give anymore. He just makes whatever, and it's probably the worst movie that Kevin Smith will make. Hopefully he does make anything bad, but God, I please hope not. I hope he doesn't make anything worse than this. It was a piece of shit. I really hated this movie. I thought the girls could be good. Like I said, Johnny Depp was okay, but other than that, Yoga Hosers is still a terrible movie, and that, of course, is why it's my number 10. So at number 9, we have a movie that I actually didn't get to review for you guys, and that's not because I didn't get to, it's because I didn't know how to review this movie. That is none other than Pup Star. What the fuck is this movie, really? I mean, this is one of those Air Bud type films with a bunch of talking dogs, and the premise of this movie, they make it seem it's going to be all these dogs singing on a stage, singing like pop music, and it's terrible. It really is something terrible. For the first like 26 minutes, that's what the movie is. Then it turns into this really boring road trip movie with some really bad musical numbers, some really ill-conceived characters, and even some racist stereotypes. I mean, what really is this movie? Who is it marketed for? How did this shit come to be? I honestly have no idea. Pub Star is a horrible movie. I really recommend you don't see it. It's really a horrible waste of an hour and a half. When this movie was over, I honestly got tired because of it. The second that they stopped singing, the movie just got more and more boring as it went on. It's one of the most boring films on this list by far. I really did not like Pup Star at all. It's a really bad movie, and it's a horrible way to appeal to kids, definitely. This is very an LCD kind of film, very lowest common denominator, definitely. But either way, I really hated Pop Star. I thought it was not Pop Star, I really like Pop Star. I didn't like Pup Star. Pup Star is a really bad movie with some really bad dog stuff that I wouldn't wish anyone to see, and that is why it is my number 9. So a really good year for superhero movies. Some were really daring, some just moved the franchise in a better direction. They were darker, they showed how risky they can be, and just really showed how far superhero movies have come, and there were just so many great ones. And then there was Max Steel. One of the most ill-conceived, horribly made superhero films in a very long time that makes us think, oh, no, we don't need good characters in this movie. Forget that. We don't need good visuals. All we need is some cliched romance between our main lead and this girl who he clearly wants nothing to do with because he's going to freak her out. Then, all we need, we need this villain. We need a bunch of scientific stuff. No, that's not what makes a great superhero movie. This movie doesn't understand what makes a good superhero movie. It takes every good element of probably every good superhero movie you've seen and completely deviates from that. And it doesn't make the movie better. It makes it worse in comparison. It's a horrible film that I hope none of you ever see, and no one really has seen it, which is a good thing. It made like no money in theaters. I'm happy that no one really saw it. It's a really bad way to spend an hour and 30 minutes. It was kind of funny to watch how ridiculous some of this stuff was. It has one of the worst superhero montages I've ever seen, but also one of the funniest superhero montages I've ever seen. It's an angsty teen movie mixed with a government, mixed with a really bad ripoff of Iron Man, mixed with a really bad version of Transformers, mixed with some sort of hodgepodge of all of those three things together, and none of it really makes sense at all. Max Steel is a very bad movie, and that, of course, is why it is number 8. So number 7, we have the contender for probably the most boring movie on this list easily, which is a film that could have been so much more interesting if it actually focused on the interesting stuff, and that, of course, is none other than Cell. This is probably Stephen King's worst movie by far, honestly. I don't think he has made a movie worse than Cell. I haven't seen a ton of his movies, but this is by far the worst one I've seen from him. Just so much missed potential in this movie, with such great actors, such a waste of great actors, such a waste of a very interesting premise that just turns into this really, first off, a really goofy movie on like the Sci-Fi Channel, and then just gets really, really boring after a while. I really wouldn't wish anyone to see this. This is not a movie that I think many people have seen. Hopefully you haven't. It's very bad. I hope you don't see it. Cell is just really, really boring overall. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It has one of the dumbest endings I've seen in a very long time, and I really hope that no one has to see it again, because it really is something terrible. So now we have number 6, which, congrats Tyler Perry, you've done it again. You've made another terrible Madea movie. Boo Madea Halloween, granted, is not as bad as Madea's Tough Love, but that is probably the least positive, the most positive thing I can say about it. This movie in general just feels so weightless. It feels like there's no script. They're kind of just making it as they go along. There's so many scenes of just nothing happening, and every scene just goes on and on and on. There's nothing funny about this movie. Tyler Perry, why are you still making these movies? Honestly, you really don't need them. I know the review of this movie got me kicked off of, got deleted off of YouTube because of Tyler Perry, but seriously, I mean, I didn't mean to be rude to Tyler Perry, but seriously, Tyler Perry, you're better than this. I can see you do a lot of better movies than this. This is not the kind of movie you need to be making. Make movies like Gone Girl. Don't make movies like this. Don't make movies that are just a bunch of, fat jokes and a bunch of black people just making all these racist jokes and things like that. It's not funny. There's nothing funny about this movie. The only time time I laughed is when the movie wasn't supposed to be funny, is this serious scene that I found hilarious. But other than that, I'm really done with these Madea movies. I really don't want to see any more of them. I'm sure we're getting another one next year, which is going to be really great for me because we know how much I love these movies. But please stop making these movies. They're really bad. Boo Madea Halloween, really bad movie. I don't want to see another Madea movie anymore, and that's why it is at number 7. So now, guys, we get to the worst of the worst. The top 5 worst movies of this year. The movies that made me want to end my life. The movies that made me contemplate whether or not I want to continue reviewing bad movies for you guys. And movies that just show me how bad movies can possibly get. Every single one of these bad movies, I don't know how they got greenlit. I really don't know. Every single one of these next 5 movies completely infuriated me. I don't want to talk about them again. And I'm glad they're on this worst list because after that, I don't have to talk about them again. Number 5 is one of the most poor excuses for a children's movie I have seen in such a long time, and that is none other than Norm of the North. Now, you might expect this movie to be way higher on the list, but really, this was supposed to be a direct-to-DVD film, and it definitely does show. All of the humor feels very direct-to-DVD. The characters are terrible. It's annoying. It's loud. It has some of the most, just poorly written characters. It has characters that are begging to be liked in the most obnoxious way possible. It has really bad acting. It has polar bear twerking. I mean, there are things in this movie that I really can't unsee, such as a polar bear twerking, or this one joke that me and my friend constantly makes fun of because it's horrible, but it's kind of hilarious at the same time. Norm of the North is a really bad kids movie that is one of those movies where you're with your grandma and you ask her a movie for Christmas. She finds in $5.99 bin because she couldn't find anything else, and then she buys it for you for Christmas. That is the kind of movie this is. It's not a children's movie that I think anyone would want to see. It's a children's movie that they'd see because they have nothing else to watch, and unfortunately, this is a very bad excuse for a children's film. You know, there were a lot of really great anime movies this year. This was by far the worst of the bunch, without a doubt. There are so many other anime movies to watch. Don't ever watch this movie, even if you are tempted to. Don't watch it. Don't come across it. There are so many better things for your kids to watch. Trust me, there are better ways to spend an hour and a half. They're going to be bored. You're going to be bored, and in the end, it's just, you know, it's really not worth taking the loss over, and that is why it is number 5. So number 4, these movies always seem to appear on this list somewhere, these really bad parody films, but number 4 is by far one of the worst I have ever seen, and it's also one of the most racist films, and that of course is none other than Meet the Blacks. I mean, how does this movie not get banned? I honestly have no idea. So many movies nowadays are getting banned, and I don't get how Meet the Blacks did not get that spot. I mean, let this sink in. This is a movie about an all-white neighborhood where a black family moves in and the purge is going on. The purge goes after all of the black families and starts killing them off, and it's stupid. It really is stupid. And I get that they're trying to make fun of the purge, and I get they're trying to make it all contemporary and shit and things like that, and it just doesn't work whatsoever. Mike Epps, I know, can do a lot better in this movie. Most of the cast, I think, can do a lot better. These movies, I get why they're made. They're really easy to make. They cost like nothing. You can make them very easily. The second this movie started with this really bad commercial about the purge, I knew this was going to be a really bad movie. I didn't expect it to be nearly as offensive and as boring as it was. The jokes in this movie are as offensive as you can possibly get. I don't think I've seen, well, actually, I have seen more ill-conceived jokes. This is only number 4. This movie really pissed me off. I don't want to talk about it again. Meet the Blacks is the lowest of the low, one of the lowest of the low in terms of parody. It's only one of the parody movies on here. There's another one we're getting into in a little bit, but it is a horrible film. It's very offensive, and that is why it is number 4. So number 3, if you guys thought that Norm of the North was a poor excuse for a children's film, you have not seen enough children's films, especially when it comes to 9 Lives. I mean, talk about a depressing children's film. Nothing about this movie feels like a kid's movie. It just feels like they assembled all of these A-list actors together. They put them in this movie. They really didn't know exactly what they were doing. They just randomly put them in here, and they tried to do the best that they could with them. But this movie, again, it just does not know how to cater to children. There are thoughts of suicide in this movie. I mean, there are scenes where a cat's drinking beer. I mean, the second the movie starts, it's so depressing, and I shouldn't feel this depressed while watching a kid's movie, but I do, and it's so boring too. I mean, I couldn't wait for this movie to end. It has some of the most misplaced music, some of the most misplaced actors, and in general, who I don't really think realize that they're in a kids movie because they're taking this way too seriously, and I have no idea why. I felt like I was watching a Mad Men episode at points. Then sometimes I felt like I was watching a SNL skit. Nothing about this feels like a real movie. It's a horrible film that I have no idea how it actually got released into theaters. It should have stayed as a joke. Everyone thought it was. It should have stayed as one, and that is why it is number 3. So number 2, here we go, guys. Here is the movie that made me not want to watch any other bad movies this year. Honestly, this is a movie that I watched it, and I tried to stay away from as many bad movies as possible because of this movie, and that is probably the worst parody film I have ever seen, that being 50 Shades of Black. Look, I'm willing to give Marlon Wayans the benefit of the doubt. As you guys know, we had The Haunted House and The Haunted House 2. Haunted House, I think, is a funny film. Haunted House 2 went really bad. And this movie is probably 10 times worse. I mean, everything that was bad about A Haunted House 2 looks like a Scary Movie or Airplane to this movie. They look like funny parody movies. This is the most ill-conceived parody film I've seen, with some extremely vulgar jokes, some horribly offensive humor, some really bad-written characters. I mean, there are characters here that are here for one joke. They have this guy who has The Weeknd's haircut, but doesn't have any of the really funny jokes they could have done with The Weeknd. They don't even call him the fucking Weeknd in this movie. He just looks like The Weeknd. Why? Because The Weeknd was in 50 Shades of Grey, so therefore we need to put him in 50 Shades of Black, and it really doesn't make any sense. And honestly, when you have a concept like this where you're parodying 50 Shades of Grey, one of the funniest movies to come out last year that had so many funny jokes, that, you know, one of the most unintentionally funny films, how do you get this so wrong? I honestly don't understand. I don't understand how this movie was honestly more unfunny than 50 Shades of Grey. And of course, there's that one joke that made me cringe to the point of no cringe. It's just a horrible, ill-conceived film that I really hope nobody sees. If you're even interested in this movie, don't watch it. Watch A Haunted House. Watch Scary Movie. Hell, watch the fucking 50 Shades of Grey. Don't watch this. This is a horrible parody film that is a waste of time. It's just really... it's not funny, it's extremely boring, and it has some of the worst jokes I have ever seen that caters to the lowest common denominator possible, and that is why it is at number 2. I can't believe we're only at number 2, but now we're gonna get to the movie that made me enrage the most. So guys, here we go. We've made it this far to number 1. This is the movie that just made me enrage the most, that made me not want to watch any other bad films, that made me almost lose my mind, and it was so bad that I couldn't even review it by myself. I literally needed people to review this movie with me, because it is probably the worst movie that I have ever seen, and that is none other than a film that I hope no one ever comes across, and that is The Greasy Strangler. Number 1, without a doubt, is The Greasy Strangler. Give me a minute. This movie is just... oh my god, this movie is bad. I mean, it has some of the worst characters I've seen, some of the most gross out humor I've seen. This isn't even humor. This is just trying to be gross. Every gross thing you could think of is in this movie. So much nudity in this movie, so much violence in this movie, and none of it is ever intentional. It just feels so grotesque. It feels so gratuitous, like it's not supposed to be there. The female character is probably the worst female character of the entire year, that's used as a sex object throughout most of this movie. You have a father-son duo who are at each other's throats and then suddenly aren't at each other's throats towards the end of the movie. You have one of the most weirdest third acts I've ever seen. Probably the weirdest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. But it's not weird in the sense that it's good or that it'll cater to certain people. Which, yeah, this movie's developed sort of a cult following of sorts, which is really strange to me. But the acting here is terrible. It's a movie that, yeah, sure, was meant to be terrible. That doesn't mean that it's good. That doesn't mean the movie is going to be better because of it. This movie was so bad that I couldn't watch it alone. It's offensive. It's disgusting. It's vulgar. It's vile. It's just... I don't know how this thing came to be, honestly. How did this happen? Who in their right mind thought that this was a good idea? I honestly have no idea. It just doesn't make any sense to me how something like this is here. How did we get to The Greasy Strangler? The lowest of the low, in my opinion. You can't make a worse movie than this. This is probably the worst movie I've ever seen that I had to suffer through. And I really have no idea how it's here. It's baffling to me. It's baffling how this movie is on this list. I have no idea how it's here. I don't understand this at all. It's a horrible film that I really, thank God, have to never talk about again. It is by far the worst film I've ever seen, and without a doubt, the worst movie of 2016. Holy shit. And with that, guys, we have now made it to the end. I really wasn't sure if we were going to. Honestly, I got a little bit worried after that movie. I know I got a little bit enraged at the last one, but can you really blame me? Guys, this has been quite a year for film. I don't watch any of these movies. Definitely, whatever you do, don't try to watch any of these. I have about 2 more movies reviews to do for you guys before I can make my best list. My best list will most likely be going up tomorrow, if not tomorrow. Definitely, it will be up Sunday. I'll definitely try to put up one of those 2 days. I'm not entirely sure which day. I'm going to film it tomorrow, definitely, but I don't know if it's going to go up Saturday or Sunday. We'll have to see. But anyways, guys, let me know what your worst movies of the year is. Love to hear your thoughts on all of these movies. If you haven't watched them, don't, please, honestly. I don't even wish these, especially the last one, do not watch The Greasy Strangler, whatever you do. Any of these movies are just horrible, and I really hope you never have to watch any of them or sit through or suffer through any of this shit. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video. I know it wasn't the most, happy of videos, which I'll definitely be a lot happier in, definitely, because luckily I'm done with all these horrible movies for this year. I'm sure there'll be more ones, in 2017, but I'm done for now, and that, of course, will be for another movie review, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.